I think the Russians are fully aware that the Israelis are more in the American camp and will always be more in the American camp. So from that perspective, what can you really do? Whereas Iranians are most firmly not in the American camp. So if you're going to have to choose sides between the two, you're going to pick Iran in that way, particularly if you are looking to cause trouble for America. And while in the past the line was more carefully drawn, the corollary of that was that Iran had regimes like Syria and Lebanon on Israel's border, where there were benefits to coordination, frankly, between the Israelis and the Russians over what was going on in those countries, because the Israelis, of course, had need to strike within those countries to block out Iran's terrorist cells, and Russia didn't mind that, I don't think. And part of this, by the way, is, of course, that the Russians had no particular objection to Hezbollah being, kind of overthrown, because, they regarded, Iran's attempts to interfere in those countries as rather counterproductive to what they were trying to do. So that, there's sort of been a strange bit of rivalry between the two, and the Russians tread careful lines everywhere, in them, and they're not signed up solely to Iran's cause. A good example, and very random example, is that Iran has for many years contested various islands in the Straits of Hormuz with the UAE. And actually, fairly recently, the Russians came out on the UAE side of the debate, and which caused the Iranians to critique them. So it's not it's a complicated one, because Russia will look to balance its interest in where it can do so. I think it's recognised that Israel is now, for it a lost cause, is not interested in that anymore. But certainly with the Gulf states, there is a lot of interest with the UAE, with Saudi Arabia, with others, and so Iran is going to sometimes be a make-weight in deals with those countries.
And you've mentioned Syria a bit there. I mean, things tend to move fast on the world stage, but it's not that long ago that we saw the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria, and Russia losing that pretty important ally in the region. I mean, is this part of a wider issue of Russia really losing its foothold in the Middle East?
Yes, absolutely. And this is why, the Russians will be consumed with, pangs of worry about what this actually means. They've lost Syria. They've, lost some of the other influence they've had in different places in the region previously, people like Gaddafi and co obviously having gone. So you're starting to see a diminution of Russia's ability to interfere and get its way in the Middle East. And were the Iranian regime to fall, there's no doubt that the biggest international loser would be Russia, because Russia once again will lose that sort of irritant to regional stability that Iran is, and the irritant to the US that Iran is. And, in fact, arguably the whole regime, the whole Middle East will be transformed if the Iranian regime goes, and not to Russia's benefit. Russia benefits from chaos. It benefits from, disputes, wars, terrorism, and that sort of setup. Those things would all go if the Iranian regime changed. And so it really is very much not in Russia's strategic interest to see a regime change in Iran. And they'll be doing their best to try and keep Iran head above water, this regime, in the coming weeks and months.